Hi, this is Elvin Haak from AL 3D Print. The long-time viewers of my channel will probably remember this printer. I did a little review about it some years ago, and it might still be up on my channel, not on YouTube, but on my website, or on some copy of that. But this is therefore my review. So the revisited review of this 3D printer. I got a couple of them. I got in the start I got one, then I got problems, then I got another one, and then later I got another one, and they are now combined into only one 3D printer altogether. This is the Artillery or Sidewinder X1 of Lenovo, which was renamed a couple of times, this film. So, and here you see what is now still running after a couple of years, and I will go in a couple of details about my modification as well and my experiences with it. So for once here I go with the head, and you see a little modification on it, not too many. This is mostly already on the start. So you see here already that I changed something with ribbon chain cables, and also here something with the extruder. So the extruder here, the problem is that sometimes it starts to skip. So I could just download one of the little parts. This little block helps to keep the handle in place. Of course, I printed some handles, and a couple of times they're broken, but most of the parts the printed one keeps on steady working very good. You also see here that I have glued this little cable. This connector is sometimes a problem. I also replaced this little subboard on it here together with the other subboard that is in here in this casing, which also I printed, of course, because ribbon cables are a nice idea and they work pretty fine when they work. And this is kind of a problem with this printer. I think it's just a design issue. They liked to have these little ribbon cables. I really like them as well because it's pretty neat without all the cables dangling everywhere. But especially for the heater cables, they were just too thin, and they tend to break up, especially in the connectors, especially in the connector which is here. So I changed that with this little extra cable going up and going down later to the body, and that is just for the heater. I made a double, so even in case one of the cables now breaks, that the printer will still run. And since I'm using mostly PETG to print, and sometimes ABS or and really sometimes still some PLA, but that's almost never. But I also use TPU and some other filaments on this printer. It works well, but the temperatures needs to be staying up a little bit higher than is average, so that will be a problem, especially in the long term for these ribbon cables. So that might be the reason that I go for a lot of ribbon cables for the heater, sometimes also for the motor. So you need to keep them on stock. Also what you need to keep on stock is, of course, this fence. You see they're now getting a bit dirty again. This is also from the PETG, all this white. You see this is really nice white dust also, although I print almost never white. So this is the white dust coming out of PETG when you print that. So be aware of that when you're using it in another room. It's just dust. Very fine dust, you don't see it normally. So, and of course I put a better shroud on it. Also I'm using Captain Tape to insulate everything better with some cotton insulators, and then also put extra Kapton tape around the cables. One time I on one of my printers, I think this one, it was a problem with the that it stopped working after a couple of times, or after 20 minutes sometimes, and after something longer. And well, this problem was solved after I replaced the stock fan, so there was probably a little problem in the original fan of this printer. So that was probably making us some kind of short circuit after a time, and then just halted the whole printer, reset it, and that was all. So yeah. As you see here, I also printed out a better holder than the standard holder, also because I use these bigger rolls. Most times it's just kind of the cheaper PET-G I use. Also make the stabilizers, downloaded, changed it a bit for myself, and then printed them. So these are just a stabilizer on both sides. They really help to make the gantry more stable. And you see the whole cabling, also extra LED lights here. And then you come here and you see one of the first things I made was for the pi, so it is separated with the zero. So the 5-volt cable is not connected in this. This is a board of a PC, as you can see, and I just soldered some extra wires on it. It also has a little boost converter and some batteries in it for controlling the pi, which on the start I used all the time. But this part has not been used, only just for the brackets. So the 5-volt connector is now just powering with the buck regulator this camera, and of course it's also powering up the pi. And the pi is not connected in this subbird directly with the 5-volt to the printer, so when the pi is on and the printer is off, then the pi is not powering or trying to power the printer. The camera, like you see here, is just a simple Wi-Fi webcam. Works quite well. It can zoom, it can rotate, it can pan, and the panning is really handy, especially for higher objects, because otherwise it's just like here, and now I can go all the way up top. I can still follow and zoom into the printer. Also the bed, like you see here, I've got a PA sheet on it. I tried a couple of them. This works pretty well. This is magnetic place, and this is just magnetic on it. As you see, I put a lot of tape on it to keep it on place in many prints. When the print is getting a bit bigger, then many times the plate, this magnetic plate, is warping up with the part, and then it's of course releasing or making problems with the print. So on bigger prints I need to tape it also to the bed, so it's not always that practical, that magnetic. But in other times it's really practical that it is magnetic, because you can just take it off, curve the plate, and then take the print off when it's cooled. So it has its pros and cons. Also for cleaning it's easier, of course, when you need to take it out and just rinse it under the tap or things like that. Here you see a whole lot of things for my switches. So this here you can see are the bed heaters, and this is done because the original heater is just a 224 heater, and it's pretty small. It's about the same area as you see here. This is what is really heated, and although the heater comes a bit like here all the way, but it's not really heating that much anymore. So this is sufficiently cooler. It might not be a problem with PLA, but it is a real problem with PET-G and ABS, because you cannot really print on the edges. So that's why I made an extra bed on it. It's 24 volt bed heater. I taped it on and put it on with very good glue, so I cannot take it off anymore anyway on this bed, but which is normally should not be a problem, but for maintenance purposes it is a problem now. But it got a bed heater on both, and I just put another extra converter on it directly from the main board and used 24 volt to heat this as well when I got this switch on. So then when this switch is on, both heaters are on, or only 24 and the 240 volt heater is then off. This is all low voltage switching directly from the main board, so it's not a problem that he has 24. So now it will be just the 24 heater, which is the upper heater, and this way it's just a 240 volt heater. I use it to get a smoother bed heating system, to get the whole bed to heat, but the thermistor in the 24 volt is now broken for a while. I cannot access this anymore without ripping it all apart, so I just use the 240 volt thermistor now. That is the original bed system, heater system. It works, but of course when now we have a longer power outing, it will still cool down too much and it will stop printing, because I don't have a big UPS running for this 240 volt system. So now you see it from another side. So what is the thing here? Okay, you got a display. I hardly use it because it also gives some errors, of course, and the USB, I hardly use that. I mean, it's nice, it's there, but I use Octoprint all the time on this printer, which is normal for all of my printers. So here you see also the adjustable 5 volt system that they had or used and can still use if I want to for the Pi. So I use Octoprint, and like you might see, I got a really small Pi 0W on it. The Pi W0 with some extra wires on it, because I used it also for the filament sensor. So I took off the filament sensor from the printer and it's now on the Pi. This works well in Octoprint with some plugins, or at least it worked. I don't know if it will work for the current version of Octoprint. I use a pretty old one. It's not connected to internet, so that's not a problem. It just keeps on working, doing what it does. It's connected to the network though, and I cannot recommend a Pi 0W or a Pi 0 like this on any 3D printer nowadays. It's just too slow, especially in startup. It can handle the load of printing, but it cannot really handle the startup. It takes more than an hour and sometimes over 3 hours just to start up, and then you can finally start to connect to Octoprint with the printer and start doing some things. It's also because Octoprint is in startup always checking all the files that are ready to be printed, and that can take quite a long time. So here you see a little external MOSFET board that I use for the external heater, the extra heater on top of the normal heater. By the way, I have it now all open because I was going to do some bigger maintenance on it, so you might see some do's ends at some places. So here you see the back of the printer. Everything is still like original, so no tension needed, almost never re-leveling of the bed. The printer comes with ABL, but that is assisted bed leveling, of course, not automatic bed leveling. But after first initial setup, it still works. I don't never need to realign anything on it. So normally it's just start up the Pi, wait a long while, preheat the whole system, and then start print. After, of course, checking if there is any filament in it, otherwise you just have a problem like, oh, okay, it's printing without filament. I have happened that a lot of times because I just forget to check that. For the power, because this machine is making 220, working on 224 for the heater, it is making a lot of problems here normally with the 220 volt in the house, with lights that are flickering and things like that. And I just got a simple line filter in it, so it is more stable. It's not perfect, but okay, it's better than nothing. This should be better, I think, but this is the problem with this kind of direct 240 volt bed heaters. When I use only the 24 heater, it's no problem. It doesn't flicker the lights that much. Of course, then it's all charged by batteries. Here you see the whole thing with an extra adapter for the LED 12 volt, and I got 24 volt, and so I will make it a bit easier in the future. Since I got really little place, everything now you see it's just movable. Since I got a very little place, every time I need a tool, then I have to move it. So also including this 3D printer. When I go to the cupboard, then I need to move this printer away to the side and just move other things away, and then I can finally use it. So I can rotate it and I can move it. This is the old part of a chair that I just had left over, so it works like that. Is it just a stand? It's pretty okay. With these wooden parts under it, it's stable enough. Also, to keep in mind, I always use the 0.8 nozzle on this printer because that's the best for it, especially since I can go fast for not too big surface plate parts. Since this video is getting a bit long already, I will split this into a couple of multiple videos. So this will be part 1, and I will go on with all these additions in the next section. So see you there in the next video.